How the turtle got cracked shell.
Long ago, in the heart of the African wilderness, all the animals lived in harmony under the great baobab tree. The land was rich and the rivers ran clear, providing the animals with everything they needed. In those days, Turtle had a smooth, shiny shell, perfectly round like a polished stone. He was admired by many for his beautiful appearance, and he walked proudly wherever he went, knowing that his smooth shell set him apart from the other animals. Turtle was not only proud of his looks but also of his intelligence. He believed he was the cleverest of all the animals and often used his wits to outsmart them, especially in matters of food. Turtle had a reputation for being greedy. Although there was plenty to eat in the jungle, Turtle always found a way to trick others into giving him their share, leaving them hungry while he stuffed himself. One year, there was a great drought. The rivers dried up and the grass turned yellow and brittle. Food became scarce and the animals grew thin and weak. The drought dragged on for months and soon, even the strongest animals struggled to find enough to eat. The once lush jungle now seemed barren, and the animals became desperate. One day the king of the skies, Eagle, called a meeting of all the animals under the great baobab tree. As they gathered, their faces weary and thin, Eagle perched high in the branches and addressed them. "My friends," Eagle said in his commanding voice, "we have lived through many seasons together, but this drought is the worst we have ever seen. However, I have heard of a solution. There is a great feast being held in the Sky Kingdom. The gods of the skies are kind and generous, and they have invited us to join them in their celebration. There will be enough food for all, but we must fly there. Those of us who cannot fly will be left behind." The animals murmured in disappointment. Most of them could not fly, and they feared they would starve if they were unable to attend the feast. Turtle, who had been sitting quietly at the edge of the gathering, perked up at the mention of food. His stomach rumbled and his greedy mind began to work. He had to find a way to attend the feast, even though he couldn't fly. He waddled over to Eagle and spoke in a smooth, confident voice. "Great Eagle," Turtle began, "I may not have wings, but surely there must be a way for me to join you in the Sky Kingdom. I am a peaceful creature, and I would love to offer my wisdom and company at the feast." Eagle looked down at Turtle, skeptical of his intentions but knowing that all the animals were desperate. After a moment of thought, Eagle nodded. "Very well, Turtle," he said. "You may join us. I will carry you on my back to the Sky Kingdom, but you must behave with honor and respect, for this is a sacred occasion." Turtle smiled, but behind that smile, he was already thinking of how he could eat more than his share at the feast. He thanked Eagle and returned to his home to prepare for the journey. The next morning, Eagle soared down to Turtle's home. Turtle, eager to begin the journey, climbed onto Eagle's back and they took off into the sky. As they flew higher and higher, Turtle gazed down at the shrinking earth below, marveling at the view. The wind whistled past his shell, and for the first time in his life, Turtle felt what it was like to fly. After some time, they reached the gates of the Sky Kingdom. The kingdom was a magnificent place, filled with towering clouds and radiant light. Birds of every kind flew around, their colorful feathers shimmering in the sunlight. In the center of the kingdom stood a grand banquet hall, where long tables were piled high with all the food Turtle could ever dream of, ripe fruits, roasted meats, and sweet cakes. As Eagle and Turtle landed, the gods of the sky welcomed them warmly. But Turtle, always thinking ahead, had devised a plan. Before anyone could introduce him, Turtle whispered to Eagle, "Since I am the only one without wings, I believe it would be best if I changed my name for the occasion. It wouldn't be fitting to be known simply as Turtle here among the gods. I shall be called All of You." Eagle, too focused on the feast ahead, did not question Turtle's strange request and agreed to introduce him as All of You. The banquet began, and the gods and animals feasted together. Turtle's eyes grew wide with excitement as platters of food were passed around. When the first dish was presented, the host of the feast stood and called out, "This dish is for all of you." Turtle, hearing his new name, immediately stretched out his hands and pulled the entire platter toward himself, devouring the food as quickly as he could. The other animals and gods looked at him in confusion, but said nothing, thinking perhaps it was a custom they didn't understand. Then came the second dish, and again the host announced, "This dish is for all of you." Turtle wasted no time, snatching up the food and eating it all, leaving nothing for the others. Dish after dish, the same thing happened. Every time the host said, "For all of you," Turtle claimed the food for himself, stuffing his belly while the others watched in disbelief. Soon, Turtle had eaten so much that he could hardly move, his belly swollen and round. The animals and the gods began to whisper among themselves. They realized that Turtle had tricked them, and their confusion turned to anger. Eagle, now furious, approached Turtle and said, "You have deceived us all, Turtle. This feast was meant to be shared, but you have eaten everything yourself. You will pay for your greed." Turtle, too full to flee or defend himself, could only watch in horror as the gods and the animals gathered around him, their eyes blazing with anger. Eagle, who had brought Turtle to the Sky Kingdom, took matters into his own talons. He grabbed Turtle by the shell and carried him high above the Sky Kingdom, over the edge of the clouds. "You will not return to the earth in honor," Eagle said. "You will fall from the sky as a lesson to all who are greedy." With that, Eagle released Turtle from his grasp, and Turtle began to fall. The wind roared in Turtle's ears as he plummeted toward the earth, faster and faster. Terrified, Turtle tucked his head and legs inside his smooth shell, praying for protection. The ground rushed up to meet him, and with a loud crack, Turtle hit the earth, his once smooth shell shattering into pieces. For a long time, Turtle lay on the ground, dazed and in pain. His beautiful shell was now cracked and broken, the pieces held together only by his tough skin. Slowly, he crawled to the nearest water hole, where he could see his reflection. Gone was his smooth, polished shell. In its place was a rough, cracked shell, full of jagged lines and scars. Turtle hung his head in shame, realizing that his greed had not only caused him to lose the feast, but also his prized possession, his perfect shell. From that day on, Turtle was no longer proud and boastful. He became humble and cautious, always remembering the lesson he had learned in the Sky Kingdom. And so, that is how Turtle got his cracked shell. To this day, turtles all over the world bear the marks of Turtle's greed, their shells forever cracked as a reminder of the consequences of selfishness and trickery. The animals in the jungle never forgot Turtle's fall, and they often told the story to their children, teaching them the importance of sharing and humility. As for Turtle, he lived the rest of his days quietly, never again seeking to outsmart his fellow creatures, content to live a simple life with his cracked but sturdy shell.